Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where, it's another juicy discussion. Get comfortable. Because on Thursday, for one brief shining moment, Warner Media's head honcho Jason Kilar was a hero. Well, he was actually a hero before that, thanks to Snyder fans throwing their allegiances to Warner Brothers' AT&T overlords, because the Snyder Cut would likely not be happening without the need for HBO Max content. It just turns out they need more, and they need it earlier. Because, of course, as I've been telling you, the Snyder Cut's not supposed to debut until March. That's what I've been told. It could always be pushed back, although I don't think that HBO Max and Warner Brothers aren't really in the business of pushing anything back anymore. But I've been hearing March for quite some time now. Anyway, on Thursday, when it was announced that Warner Brothers' entire 2021 movie slate was going to debut simultaneously in theaters and on HBO Max the same day at no extra cost, fans rejoiced, while the industry was too shocked to respond, as Warner Brothers hadn't called any of the companies or talent behind these films to discuss it with them, or to even give them the heads up. Apparently, the big movie theater chains got a heads up, but not a big one. They only got the call an hour ahead. Why didn't Warner Media call anybody and give them a heads up? Well, I think it's likely because A, Warner Media was going to pull the trigger no matter what, so why have a conversation if it's not an open debate? And B, why risk a leak? Because I think that talent and studios, talent and other production companies would have tried to stop this deal from happening. They might have leaked it. They could have, threatened to sue. We'll talk about some legal possibilities in a moment. But I think that now, if anybody tries to stop this from happening, they risk fans getting upset with them and, calling them a Scrooge and denying people the chance to watch these movies safely and comfortably in their own homes. So that's a pretty brilliant strategy on Warner Media's part as well. But you know what? Speaking of heroes and villains, now that the initial shock has worn off, to quote one of Warner Brothers' own movies, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And Kilar and his boss, AT&T's John Stankey, well, let's talk Fallout. Let's talk about what's been happening since that major announcement. And also, not only what people's reactions are, but the nuts and bolts from a business perspective of what this announcement really means. All right, so I know a lot of you will be like, I don't care. I know what it means for me, Grace. But, you want the industry to remain healthy and continue to be able to create content. It will. The question is, where will that content live? It's interesting. All right, so anyway, I know some of you are real let it all burn types, so the comment section should be interesting. All right, so with Witches and then Wonder Woman 1984 going to HBO Max, those were one-offs. So movie theaters understood. And also, that talent got bought out of their back-end deals. Talent for back-end deals is usually actors, but sometimes directors if they're big names. Like Robert Zemeckis had a back-end deal for Witches. So Warner Brothers, what that means is they straight up paid the talent for Witches and Wonder Woman 1984 the bonuses that they most likely would have gotten if the films had gotten traditional theatrical releases. They just said, here's a check. Thanks for playing along and supporting us. But that was just 2 movies. It's going to be much more difficult for Warner Media to settle the balances for 17 movies, and they're not going to, which we're going to discuss. So let's go through the reactions from the business side. All right. So first off, AMC right away, they were able to find their voice first after the shock wore off, and by the way, AMC is the movie theater company that first cut that 17-day window deal with Universal, where they got a cut of the PVOD after a movie hits PVOD 17 days after release. And Cinemark and Cineplex have also struck similar deals with Universal. AMC has said there will be repercussions if Warner Brothers doesn't make this right, and that talks between AMC and Warner Media have already begun. We'll see if those talks bear any fruit. But AMC could decide not to run any Warner Brothers movies. I think they'll definitely run Wonder Woman 1984 at AMC Theaters because that deal is already in place and AMC just needs to stay open. But I think that for an entire year, you could get to a situation where AMC, the biggest movie theater chain, I believe in the world, but certainly in the United States, might say we're not going to play any Warner Brothers movies. But Warner Brothers might be like, I don't see anybody else releasing movies besides Universal, and they're not releasing any of their big movies. Do you want Mortal Kombat? I'm trying to think of early films that are supposed to come out first. Do you want Tom and Jerry? And AMC might be like, God damn it, we do. So I think that, it's a little Warner, I have to say, AT&T is a little bit more like Disney. Warner Brothers was beloved in the industry and with the movie theater company, studios, movie theater exhibitors, because they were so great and they were like willing to talk to people and like do what was best for everyone. Whereas Disney, of course, as we all know, has been like, it's our way or the highway. And, they have always gotten their way, in fact, because of the strength of their brands. And I think that some of the films are not so great. From a business perspective, not that strong. But these are some really big titles. Who's going to turn down the Suicide Squad and say they don't want to play it in their theaters? Because some people will want to go to the theater and see that film. We'll talk about a survey in just a moment, but, the people who are going to the movies now will certainly go to see those big movies in the theater. So it's like it's a trickle, but it's better than nothing. So it's very interesting. Then Deadline reported this morning that Legendary, the film finance slash production company behind Dune and Godzilla vs. Kong, who were going to get $250 million from Netflix for Godzilla vs. Kong before Warner Brothers nixed that deal, they're planning to take Warner Brothers to court, Deadline is reporting, as they feel that this will not only give them substantially less revenue with this release strategy, but that it will hurt their franchises down the line as they will not be as strong and they won't be as perceived as strong. So they're going to argue substantial financial loss, especially because they could have gotten a $250 million check. Now, Legendary, by the way, put up 75% of the budgets for both Dune and Godzilla vs. Kong. I don't know if they'd win that lawsuit because Warner Media could argue that, Warner Brothers is releasing the film globally. It just has the streaming component. It's tough. All right, so anyway, as for talent, word is via Vulture that talent might threaten not to help advertise these films if their back-end deals aren't bought out. So if you start seeing talent not appear to promote these movies, that might be why. I think there were some talent didn't show up at CCXP, but I would be surprised if the fallout were that quick because I think that stuff was all recorded in advance. But I would also argue if I were Warner Media, I'd be like, I don't need you to advertise this movie. I have footage of you in it. I don't need you. Where are you going to advertise it? You can't really go on a show anyway. Like Seth Rogen did a whole bunch of promotions for An American Pickle for HBO Max. Melissa McCarthy promoted Superintelligence. That didn't really seem to do anything for those movies. People are either interested in the movie itself or not. And I'd be like, I'll just keep airing trailers. And that's all anyone's going to care about. So go ahead and sit it out. But anyway, back-end deals, as I said again, are where talent and sometimes directors get a cut of the box office. They get bonuses based on box office performance. For instance, Robert Downey Jr. got $75 million off of Infinity War. Harrison Ford got about $65 million off of Indiana Jones in the Crystal Skull. Can you believe he made so much money off such a crappy movie? Hollywood's an amazing business. All right, so anyway, Deadline is reporting that Warner Brothers, with 17 films to take care of here, will not be paying off any more back-end deals, but instead they're going to be moving up the goalposts. If before you would get a bonus if the box office hit $300 million worldwide, now you'll get it if it hits $150 million worldwide. Tenet did $359 worldwide, so Warner Brothers could argue that talent will see solid bonuses off of the new goalposts. You might be like, well, if Tenet did $359, why move the goalposts? 300 would have been it. But the thing is that, it's goalposts. So at 150, you'll probably get one bonus, and then if it hits 300, you'll get another bonus. So the Tenet structure with the goalposts move probably would have accounted for 2 bonuses, and as it would if the movie had been released normally. Although, based on some of your reactions to Tenet, I don't know how Tenet probably would have made $600 million. Probably would have made double that. So Warner Brothers' decision to cut the goalposts by 50% makes sense. But if I were the talent's representation, I'd say, well, Tenet is a best case scenario here, pal. The Croods 2, in just 2 weeks, has only made $60.5 million worldwide, and New Mutants, which had a full run, only made $46.1 million worldwide. So you can't argue they're all going to be Tenets, right? At the end of the day, as everyone can see, Warner Media did what was best for Warner Media and AT&T in Hollywood, and even their own Warner Brothers, be damned. AT&T wants their own version of Netflix. That's the whole reason they purchased Warner Media, it seems. Disney Plus has not just been keeping Disney afloat during this pandemic, but has been keeping Disney stock strong and steady. And Warner Media would very much like HBO Max to do the same for their stock. Now, obviously, this could work. HBO Max could get to a point where it generates Netflix-level revenue, which would be $20 billion a year. That's why everybody's so in love with the Netflix business model, because it just is literally printing cash. $200 billion a year. So then Keelar and Stanky will go back to being heroes, probably not to movie theaters, but to everyone else, especially their shareholders. But if it doesn't work, what if they just can't create another Netflix? I mean, some of you are sending me stories about HBO Max app downloads soaring. So, I mean, I'm excited to see what the subscription numbers are in the near future, what they look like. But this is a long play. Not as we've discussed in the subscription streaming service game. It's not just getting people to sign up, but to keep them signed up. Because this is expensive. HBO Max is a very expensive service. It is the most expensive out of all the streaming services. Although Netflix is close to that. So can it stay within people's entertainment budget? That's the big question. Now, if they can't, will AT&T still want to own Warner Media? Will they still feel it's worth it to them? Or will they argue, also, what if Warner Brothers breaks the theatrical model and there just becomes less money out of making movies? I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. How much, I guess we would have to figure out how much a movie studio generates in revenue from movies, right? Is it more than $20 billion in terms of revenue? Although revenue is not gross income. That's really fascinating to me. But, I mean, talk about movie math, right? But, I guess you have to wonder if at the end of the day it doesn't work out. There's a chance that AT&T could say, you know what, we don't want to be in Hollywood anymore. And they could chop up Warner Media, which is a whole lot of different parts, and sell it off and make a substantial amount of money that way. So there's a lot of crazy ways that this could go. As for theaters, on Friday, AT&T's John Stankey gave an interview and he said that he feels that while movie theaters will never go away, as for streaming, it's not him but the pandemic that let that horse out of the barn. That's his quote. I don't know about that. Up until Warner Brothers' announcement on Thursday, a couple of movies were being sacrificed here and there, and it had seemed that Universal had found the best compromise for smaller mid-range picks. Although, as we have been discussing, they can't sit on these big movies forever as they're accruing interest because they're basically, lent money. I think we all felt the theatrical window would likely shorten, but I don't think anybody felt it would disappear entirely, which is what this HBO Max situation has just done. Many in the industry are fretting that once consumers get used to having the choice same day of theater or streaming, it will be impossible to take it away from them without serious repercussions in terms of consumer confidence and loyalty. And I agree about that. I don't think you can take the choice away once it's there. The biggest question now is if Warner Brothers will be out here all by themselves or if other studios will join them with this simultaneous release strategy. Disney has their big Disney Plus presentation this Thursday and will likely answer that question. It's been long rumored to be, pushing some more movies to Disney Plus, either under Premier Access for an additional cost or at no extra cost, like Soul. But now we'll have to find out if they'll include a simultaneous release, theatrical release at the same time. And that, would Disney argue that they were being nice to movie theaters, or will movie theaters feel that they're helping put a nail in the coffin? It's a short-term versus a long-term gain-loss. Now, something else that's very interesting is a survey was released on Friday, which found that 71% of U.S. moviegoers aren't willing to go to a movie theater in the next month. So the Wonder Woman 1984 deal makes sense. And a little over 50% said that they won't be going back to the theater for the next 6 months. So that's pretty bad. Although, again, people have said, why'd you have to sacrifice the whole of 2021? Although the vaccine won't be available to the general public until about April. And then you're going to be heading right back into winter, and winter is the worst time for the virus. So I don't know if things will rebound for next winter. Furthermore, in that survey, they found that only 18% of U.S. moviegoers have been to the movies since the pandemic began. 18%! That's horrific, although to me, not surprising. And it goes to show that many of us, the loudest group online has been saying that there is not an issue and that people are more than happy to go to movie theaters. But as you can see, that's obviously not the case, not only from that survey, but from the actual box office numbers. Although, to be fair, a lot of theaters are closed. But what about foreign moviegoers? They're literally being left out of this equation. Studios are assuming that they will still go to theaters, as the HBO Max option is only available in the United States, at least for now. But COVID is surging overseas as well, and many of overseas theaters are closed too. So even if people were willing to go, they can't. And studios could discover that even though Tenet made $302 million overseas, that might not be able to be duplicated. We'll find out with Wonder Woman 1984, which will be the first test case. Why didn't Warner Media wait until after Wonder Woman 1984 to see if this was a valid release strategy? I believe because they wanted to be first and not seem like they were being reactionary to any big moves from another studio, aka Disney. And you'll note that they made this announcement before Disney's big presentation. So now it's Disney that's going to seem like they're being reactionary and that Warner Media is the one setting the pace in the industry. As for this, that's an ideal place to be. Now, as for this weekend at the box office, there were no new major entries domestically, although there typically aren't the weekend after Thanksgiving, while Monster Hunter debuted overseas. It was number one globally, but it was a pretty puny number because, as many of you tweeted me, China yanked the film from theaters, literally pulled the movie from theaters on Friday night after it made the rounds on social media that audiences felt there was a racist joke against China in the film. Yikes! The producer has since apologized, but how did that get to the final product? That's shocking to me. The bridge between the East and the West seems almost impossible to cross. Hollywood just can't seem to make a movie geared towards Chinese audiences. They have to just hope that they'll take to the American fare that they're exporting. Shang-Chi, again another swing from Disney, will be the next to give it a try. As for what people are streaming right now, it's all holiday films over on iTunes, thanks to it being the holidays and some pretty sweet deals. Although I'm very happy to see Fat Man, a film which I thought was quite good, still in the top 5. I suspect it'll stay in the top 10 the entire holiday season, or at least, maybe. And Universal's Freaky hit PVOD 17 days later, debuting at number 6. Again, AMC Cinemark and Cineplex get a cut of that money. On Netflix, it seems a lot of you hate-watched Selena, which shot to number 1 when it debuted on Friday and even trended all day long on Twitter. As for what's coming out this week, on Friday, Netflix debuts The Prom, Disney Plus, the original film Safety, while Michael Bay's pandemic movie Songbird hits PVOD. A lot of people sure paid a lot of attention to that trailer because they felt it was in such poor taste when it debuted, but let's see if they'll hate-watch that movie. So what have you been watching and what do you plan to watch? And several days later, with all this new information, how do you feel about the Warner Bros. HBO Max deal? Not only as a viewer, but also from a business perspective. Share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today. Oh, and of course, be sure to join me this coming Sunday for our first watch-along for the holiday season. We're going to do Die Hard at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be great. It is a Christmas movie. I can't wait. All right. Again, share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.